Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the jungle. I'm your host, Hamilton Winters. So excited to be with you this morning and really excited to be joined by my friend, Evan Knox, the founder of Caffeine Marketing. Evan, how you doing this morning?
Hey, what's up, Hamilton? Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And this is something that we've been trying to do for months now and has not come to fruition until today, but it's all in good God's timing that you're here this morning. And who knows, we might not have been able to be in person any other day. So I'm glad to have you here in studio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. And we got Isaac over here in the corner looking sharp. So I'll do what I always do and just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background on who Evan Knox is and kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah, so founder of Caffeine Marketing here in the Atlanta area. It's a small marketing agency that we make marketing profitable for small companies that are doing less than 50 million or so a year in annual revenue. And then also I'm an investor, so I'm part of an investment group, and we basically come in as partners into a company. Currently our average so far is like 4 to 5x their top line revenue within the first couple of months. Nice. So yeah, it's like basically take tired businesses or businesses that are struggling or can't or have hit a plateau and then help scale them from there. Nice. So it's a lot of fun.
Probably the most unique thing that I've heard from you so far is that you're local.
Yeah.
I don't meet many locals. So what is it like to live and work and to be in business where you grew up? I obviously moved from Louisiana and could have had a great experience by being a professional there. God had other opportunities for me. Give me a little bit of insight into your experience being here in Atlanta. Is this something long-term for you? Is this something that you're putting down roots? Maybe some of that you're kind of keeping close to the chest, but let me know whatever you're willing to share.
So it was interesting because I left high school and went and did mission work with an organization called YWAM, and then lived in Australia and Thailand for a couple months each, which was a blast. And then eventually ended up in Colorado, met my wife out there, and Colorado is sick for those who have never been.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I love snow skiing. But eventually we found ourselves out in Charlotte and then did not love Charlotte and then moved back down to Atlanta. I don't know that we thought Atlanta was going to be the long-term plan, but I do love the city. I love the people. My family's here, which is a huge benefit. Now that we've got a 1-year-old, it's great to have my mom so she can come down and watch Titan or whatever. That's the name of my son. So I really enjoy that. And it's also very interesting because my grandfather was a business owner as well, and he started Knox Jewelers here in the Atlanta area. And so there's a lot of nostalgia that I have, living in the same city that my grandfather started his company in. And I will be driving places, like I see the Chipotle that my grandfather would go to send me to pick up lunch for us at, or the Jersey Mike subs, which I'm not a sub fan, but that was another errand that he would send me to go on when I was like 16 and was working at his store. So there's a lot of nostalgia. There's a lot of connections with people. It's nice to know where you're going, not have to use Waze. So all those little fun benefits are great.
Yeah. You glossed over something that we have to stop on. The fact that your son is one and his name is Titan.
Yeah.
That's a big name.
Yeah. He, for those who have kids, maybe their experience has been similar. My wife and I had separate names, literally up until the point he was born. We both realized that both of our names, we acknowledged, hey, that's not going to work for our son. And so we had a bit of my wife hates this, but we had basically a branding session for my son at that moment. And I watched it through a branding exercise. And I was like, okay, what emotions does he make you feel? What does that remind you of? What kind of car would he be if he was a car? My wife's like, he would be a Porsche. And I was like, he would be like a Ford Raptor. And so we eventually landed on Titan, but his middle name is the same as mine, which is Brennan. So we thought, man, if he ends up being kind of small, he's got glasses, which is totally fine. Yeah. But if it doesn't fit the Titan mold, then he's got a backup.
He's either going to be a gladiator, or he can be Brennan.
Yeah, totally.
Which is not a bad second place.
Yeah,
which is awesome. It's cool that he's following your footsteps there. And we're the same age, from what I understand.
Yep.
And in kind of two completely different chapters of life.
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend, but I'm not married. You have a 1-year-old, and that's like not even in my close term picture.
Sure.
So it's really neat to be in studio with somebody that's as similar as you could be, but yet different enough to where, I mean, just being around you, I'm getting so many good insights. I can't wait to continue the relationship. But also wanted to go back and get a little bit of insight into your journey, because you mentioned the YWAM.
Yep.
I had not heard of that, but your experience of the mission trips, which is something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
And just kind of answering the call that God has for you and that journey to follow down. Give me a little bit more on that and how that came into your life, why that was something you decided to do, and kind of how that led you to today.
When I was in, I want to say middle school, and I don't want to be overly religious, so if somebody's not about that, I apologize. Just kind of my story here. But I decided to follow Jesus when I was in middle school. And it was at a pivotal time because my dad really started to struggle with drugs at that time. And he had owned his own business, which was essentially the B2B side of the jewelry industry. So he would wholesale diamonds, import them, stuff like that. And my grandfather did the retail side. So, a lot of stuff around that, which is great. I'm a certified gemologist, which is a fun fact.
That's awesome.
Yeah, totally. So I could grade rings and stuff like that. But I circle back to the mission stuff and saying that faith became really important to me because my earthly father was struggling so much that I just really developed a love for my heavenly father. And I felt this unreal deep connection. And even when I was in high school, while obnoxious in many ways and still a prideful, high school guy, I really wanted my friends to know about Jesus. And I was really passionate about sharing my experience of faith with them. And I figured, you know what? I think this is something that's now's the best time, if ever, for me to go and do some sort of long-term mission work, because I was 18 at the time, had no wife, and also no kid for sure. And I thought, man, I've got little to no responsibility. I think it's time for me to just go lay out my life and serve other people. But I will say that experience dramatically changed me. Going overseas and experiencing multiple different cultures, because there was a lot of people in that discipleship training school, essentially, that were from Asia, Europe, whichever. And it really opened my eyes, helped me grow in self-awareness, and experiencing extreme poverty while we were in Thailand dramatically impacted the way that I look at my life, and made, if a proposal goes through, if it doesn't, just not even matter at all, you know? So it's good.
It's amazing how it kind of recasts your whole view on things.
Yeah.
Which is special.
Yeah. When I remember seeing, and I'll try not to be overly graphic here, but we were walking down the street of some Bangkok area. And as far as I could see down the street, it was like if Peachtree Parkway was just full, it's just a local street here in Atlanta, was full of people that were homeless, displaced, medically disabled. As far as I could see, everybody was begging on the street. It was incredibly heartbreaking. And then I remember trying to, you couldn't help all those people. There were more people that needed help than your brain could even wrap your mind around, or my mind around at least. And I remember walking by a guy who I thought was dead because his, for lack of a better term, he was decaying from the outside, and you could see in. And it was really, I almost fainted and watched, poor me or whatever. But that moment dramatically changed my life, because I remember walking back into a grocery store here in America and just being in a bit of a reverse culture shock and going, whatever I'm experiencing right now really does not, it still matters and it's still real. It doesn't mean I need to minimize whatever I'm experiencing. I still need to process that. But it's a helpful indicator or a marker. If we were trying to bring a ship back in from sea, we were looking at those little buoys or whatever, where to go into the channel. It's an indicator for me to go, okay, does this really matter 100 years from now? Is this really a big deal? Probably not. So then I could process it through that way.
I love that. That's strong. Is that still part of your overall life? I know it's been a catalyst for what you're doing now. How do you see what you do with the marketing and the investing and your entrepreneurship matching with the experience that you had that's kind of sprung you into this, and how do you kind of, I don't know, what's the balance in between those? Because I'm going through something very similar with, knowing what your vocation is and knowing what your calling is, and the messages that you and I get to share for our clients, but also the message that we both are very passionate in sharing, which is the message.
Yeah.
So what does that look like to you?
So I like to think that God has enabled me to do this business stuff almost like a hobby. And I try to hold it as a hobby. So when people ask, what do you do for fun? In my head, I don't always answer this way, but I genuinely think I can do my business for fun. But if one day I felt like God was like, hey, it's time to move on, I got other stuff for you. I hope that my heart would be like, oh, for sure. Like whatever, we're game. You want us to go somewhere, go do something, 100%. So I try to have that posture. I try to also circle back with that in my own heart. Whenever I get, again, this might sound crazy to other people, but like whenever I feel like I'm materialistic in some way, I try to, I'm like, all right, what can we do to fight that? You know what I mean? Some accountability with my wife. So I'll be like, hey, can we if I want like this new thing or whatever, which is fine to want stuff, but I feel like it's starting to take a hold in my own heart. I'm like, hey, let's go like do this thing or give this money or whatever, just to like kind of counteract that. So I think it does set at least me up well in business because I care about the person across the table from me. I care about them more than I care about what I'm getting from them. And so that helps me to be a guide to them and then ultimately deliver better service, better results, because I'm not thinking about, hey, what's the best thing for my pocketbook or for the company's pocketbook, which matters. But I'm sitting there thinking, what's the thing that's going to grow their company the most? And I find that growing companies and growing the middle class is, in a way, I think, kind of bringing heaven here to earth. Like it's helping people experience better lives. And it's not to say that Jesus just wants us to live a cushy life. I don't think that's it. But I do think bringing good things, if God is the giver of every good and perfect gift, then if I can bring some goodness into somebody's life by helping them grow their company. Most of the time I work with the actual owner or the owner operator. Other times the company's a little bit bigger and it's, a C-level guy who's in charge of marketing and sales, whatever. He matters, his family matters. And being able to love him well and take care of him and help him be successful, I find that is everything can be spiritual and fulfilling if you see it as a way to do it with building God's kingdom here. The last thought I will add there is that and I don't do this perfectly, I don't do it all the time, but I like to think that there's this element of, hey, I get to go to work with my Heavenly Father every day. Yep. And so if I'm building a marketing strategy document for somebody, or I'm overhauling a website, building a wireframe, or if I'm, we've got people here that we work with, like as contractors here in the U.S. We've also got people overseas. Instead of just seeing this person as a means to end, I see my people as people that I can love, and maybe they experience Jesus through their boss in some way. Yep. So it's almost like, hey, God, what do you want to do today? What do you want to work on? Obviously, there's more strategic stuff than just that. But hopefully, that's my heart and my attitude.
I love that. And working for God, not for human hands.
Yes.
What I keep coming back to is whatever you do it well, as if you're working for the Lord, not for human hands. 100%. And it seems like you are a really great example of that. I mean, I'm just hearing your story. I'm inspired by that. I'm sure everybody else is as well. Listening to this, we just got connected on LinkedIn. I think you added me or somehow a few months ago. And it's so interesting that the majority of people that come in here that I've had the honor of interviewing are just kind of random connections.
Yeah.
But it depends on the way you view it, kind of to your point. Are they random or are they ordained? And it's when you have conversations like this that you really realize that that there is no such thing as a coincidence. So thank you for being willing to open up with us this morning. I'm interested in learning more about your mindset because we just spoke beforehand about starting our own businesses in our early 20s, which is not a typical thing to do.
Right.
Not something that everyone has the appetite for, but it's also not for the faint of heart. You don't become an entrepreneur just to say that you are one. Typically, the best entrepreneurs I've learned are the ones that don't call themselves that necessarily. Or
it's not on their Instagram bio.
Come on. But you're a real one because even you, right before we came in here, you're like, yeah, I mean, you were trying to skirt around the word and you were like, but whatever you call it. I was like, oh, this guy's real. He knows that it's hard work and effort and it's not all about the titles and it's not all about the all the good that comes with it. It's the hard work and the fulfillment that comes with it. What gave you the courage? What gave you the spark of inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to start my own thing?
So what I've found is that a lot of the entrepreneurs, and this is, we'll see how long I actually agree with this, because I could totally change my mind next month.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see a distinction between entrepreneurs and business owners. One is not better than the other. A lot of them have different strengths. They have different experiences. Business owners, I mean, golly, they employ 90% of the population, or is it 50? I think there's 90% of businesses are small businesses, and they employ 50% of the population, of the U.S. population. So, I mean, really important job. I mean, to own, run a company, employ other people, that is a big deal, to put food on the table for other people. But what I'm finding is that an entrepreneur has a little bit more risk or more appetite for risk. And they also don't want to just they kind of get bored. And what I found is that a lot of entrepreneurs have experienced some sort of trauma. This is not say that all do. We were talking earlier, some of them are just like really have had awesome environments to grow up in, and they've had people that have encouraged them along the way. But I see that there's some form of adversity that they've overcome where running a business and creating a business and starting multiple ones or selling them or exiting and restarting doesn't feel like a burden. It almost feels normal in a way because, speaking from my own personal experience, when my dad started doing drugs, my parents got divorced, my stepdad dies in a car accident, my dad ends up dying. So all this like super traumatic, heavy stuff, awful in the moment, would never wish to have it again. But I'm thankful that my resiliency curve grew in those moments and that my ability to tolerate certain levels of uncomfort or uncertainty really grew. And I don't think that I would be I wouldn't say success or not, but I would say that I would not have the same appetite or ability to withstand multiple plates or stuff spinning and that feel not like a burden, it feel kind of fun in a way. So I think for me, it's almost that I look back at the trauma or the hard stuff that I experienced that has set me up for success here. And I wish I don't have a secret ingredient. I don't know that it's like, wow, Evan's awesome. But I think that we're often faced in those moments of adversity or those tough times for those who experience it to either kind of succumb to them or to rise to them. I don't have a secret answer for why that happened to me and why it didn't happen to the next guy. I could have done drugs just like my dad. Yeah. I like to think it comes down to my faith, but even people of faith struggle with that. So I guess I'm just thankful, and I don't think I fully understand it all.
Yeah. So, wow. Something that I've said more recently than ever is there are really two main reactions people have to adversity. It's to run towards God or away from Him. And I don't know if that's been your experience. Maybe that's even the difference between believers and non-believers, because you can have some folks that are believers that tend to run away from God when things get tough. Yeah. That being said, you can have folks that have never believed before that it takes that breaking point to get to a point where you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah. It's cool to hear your story and to see that you've taken it, but you've not only taken it and learned from it, but you've used it to fuel yourself further, which is a really, really inspiring, but also emotionally connecting story. I resonate with that. Yeah. I can sympathize with it, but I can't empathize with it. But you sharing it with me gives me a view into your eyes that's special. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. And you're welcome. I think that there are two moments that stick out in my head is like historically, one with God and one with my dad. My moment with God was I had moved to Colorado. I just done the whole missions thing. My heart was just really heavy. And I was aware of my own inability in some way. Like I just knew, hey, I don't know if I was 21. I didn't want to do 21. I was like 20 years old, maybe 19 years old at that point. And really just was overwhelmed by everything in some ways. And I remember going to God and just going to my car, which I drove a Geo Metro at the time. I sold like a pretty decent like Nissan Pathfinder and bought a Metro. I don't know why I did that. It's like the worst car ever. Don't let anyone drive a Geo Metro. But I bought one. And I'm sitting in the Geo, and I just remember being like, God, where else would I go? And I just started bawling. I'm like, I don't even know. Like, if I wanted to do something else, like, I just know that it wouldn't satisfy. Yep. I know that you are the only one that can really, like, satisfy my soul. And at the end of the day, even if I went the far other direction of where I, was going, I just knew that, hey, this is not, I'm going to ultimately come back to Him anyway. So why waste the time, exploring vanity.
Yeah.
So the other part with my dad, which was interesting, was that I remember riding in the car with him, well, the truck at the time, and we were riding back from riding dirt bikes together. And my dad at that point was really sick. He was just super skinny, and quite honestly, he looked like a drug addict. And he was giving me advice on something. And this was not new. I mean, he had been doing drugs a little bit, and he had like not showed up for stuff and all kinds of awful things. But, well, not awful, but just really sad things. And we were driving home, and he's going to drop me back off at my mom's place at that point. And he's giving me advice on something. And I knew his advice was correct. Like, I knew that was the wise decision to do in that moment. But it made me so mad that he was the one giving it to me, because I was so angry at him that I didn't want to do the wise thing. And I sat there and I contemplated that for a little bit. And I could not have articulated this as a high schooler. But in that moment, I chose an internal locus of control. And I basically said, hey, I'm not going to forfeit my decision to somebody else. I'm going to choose to do what I think is right in this moment. And I can't control the world. I can't control my dad, but I can control my own actions. And so at that moment, I decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take wise advice no matter where it comes from. Or I'm not going to let my dad dictate my outcome. Or, I'm super bummed I didn't have a scholarship, like a family, quote unquote, family scholarship. You know what I mean? Like somebody who's going to pay for me to go to college. Super bummed about that. And I thought, I'm not going to be a victim to that. Like, I'm going to forge my own path. And I'm going to work the system harder than it's working me. And so I just remember that being a critical moment where I was like, I just am not going to be a victim. And I'm going to figure out some way to overcome this. So
I love that. I write a lot, as I get the sense that you do too. You have kind of a control of words that you've selected. I can see it in your eyes when you choose the words that you choose. You're very intentional with them. If you don't write, you should. Here's me challenging you to do that. One of the things that I wrote about was you don't get to control how others play their roles in your life. The only thing you get to control is how you play your role in everyone else's lives. And so if we're all actors on a stage, win an Oscar for playing you. Win an Oscar for playing you in everyone else's life, because that's all you get to play. And we're here for just a short moment. It's the Dead Poet Society, and it's fleeting life. We get a part of the script, and we get to play it really well, and then it's gone. But making the most of what you get during that time it seems like kind of a calling card of yours, if you will. Tell me if I'm wrong. That's just the sense that I'm getting. It's encouraging to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think there's two parts of that, and I appreciate that. The one side of that is I had peace when my dad passed. It was years after he got clean. He had gone to jail. He'd gotten out. He got clean. But when he suddenly passed, out of nowhere, he ended up having some sort of rare infection that, like, I won't go into the details. But so when he passed, I had peace that in those seasons when it was so hard, I still chose to love him the best way that I knew how. While imperfect, I'm so glad that I did, because now I wouldn't, I couldn't change that now, whatever. If I would have just said, the heck with you, I'm out, I would have used some other choice words if I would have done that. But no, I forgave him, and I tried to rebuild that relationship. So I had peace there. And then the other one is that if I truly believe that this life is a gift, I want to play it to win. I think that Christians can sometimes, I'm not saying all, I'm just saying that sometimes we could potentially be apathetic and just go, oh, well, why would I really do this or that if, I'm going to be with God one day? Why would I try to work hard, or why would I try to make something, or whatever that might be? And I think, man, if I've been given this one life on this earth, I think I want to do the very best that I can with it. I want to be the very best father that I can. I want to be the best husband that I can. I want to be the best version of me, just like you were saying, to the people around me. And I want to love them really well, so that my funeral, I don't really care what they say about me. But I guess I want to have peace when I'm gone, that, hey, I did the best I could to love the person in front of me.
Yep.
So
that makes so much sense. I think you can tell a lot about a person's viewpoint of the next life by how they live this one. Yeah. And if you're living for the eternal, you live this life a lot differently than if you're living for the temporal. There's a pastor, Doug Weiss, who said in a program that I'm walking through right now, he said, you don't change your behavior based on what you think to be true. You do change your behavior on what you believe to be true. Thinking something to be true versus actually believing it to be true. And I thought that was so interesting.
It's like
of
faith.
a point. It's exactly it. I mean, you've got 12 guys that followed Christ, and then 11 of them ended up dying for what they knew to be true.
Yeah.
Would you die for what you know to be true? And
Yeah.
the same question, would you die for what you know to be false? Absolutely not. So knowing, but also believing what you know is, and you seem like somebody that's just convicted in not just what you know, but in what you believe. And it's refreshing. It is. With that being said, what's on your plate right now? What's next for you? Because I know I'm excited to see what becomes of Evan Knox, even when you leave this office today, but much less in the future. And looking forward to a friendship that I can feel is just starting here this morning. So give me a little bit of insight into what your life looks like here in the next couple months.
So in January, February, I formed, it wasn't just me, me and two other guys, we formed an investment group. And so far, I think we've partnered in or invested in at least 6 different companies since the time of this recording. So I think like 1 per month so far.
That's awesome.
And we're accelerating that. And that to me has been so fulfilling because I get to work alongside of these guys and we get to join arm in arm and go, hey, how can we do this really well? How can we have very similar value system. And so we like to, it's kind of weird that today I was thinking, I don't want to be that guy that just sends like a Bible verse to my business partners. Like that might be kind of weird, but they also might kind of like that, you know? So I didn't end up sending it because it really was not going to make sense out of context. But to me, I love that. That to me has been really fulfilling. And it also has this purity to it. I do really love serving people with caffeine marketing. But I think that there is a purity in growing a business when you're a partner in it, because you really, truly, not only do you care about the long-term success of the company even more so, you also don't have a clouded decision-making process. And it's no longer, which you guys work with all kinds of clients, you have to convince the client that this really is the best thing for them. Hey, even if I'm 100% convinced, this is the thing right here that's going to change your company, and here's the X dollar amount that's going to be required, or even effort on the client's part, whatever cost is associated with them, you have to convince them to make that decision. Even though you know that's the thing that's going to help them dramatically in the future, there's some resistance there, and so you're always navigating that tension. Whereas if it's your own company, you just make the decision. You know, you're like, all right, we're going to do that. Cool. All right, spend that, write that check, put it on a credit card. So I love that. I also love serving people. So it's probably more of those. It's probably continuing to serve people through caffeine marketing, and then continuing to add to our portfolio and help really scale and grow these companies.
I love it. I love it. How can we, as a collective, continue to follow along, support you in what you're doing, stay up to date, and continue the conversation with you, and just run alongside you in this race?
On Instagram or LinkedIn, it's just Evan B. Knox. And then you can also go to my website, just evanknox.com or caffeine.marketing. And would love to connect with people there.
Nice.
So.
Dude, thank you for reaching out on LinkedIn months ago to even connect. And then it's so funny how one button could turn into, a podcast and a friendship. Yeah. So I appreciate all the time you've given us this morning, for your insight, for you willing to be vulnerable with us this morning and talk about something that's more than just base level stuff. Yeah. Anybody can talk base level, but it takes somebody to go deep and really dig in. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation. It's been awesome talking.
Absolutely. And for everybody watching in, listening in, sure are glad you joined us this morning in the jungle with Evan Knox. And we'll catch you next time. Everybody take care and go shine your light today. See you.